We're really delighted tonight to have Jaki Suter join us. She is a certified career coach and resume writer with the Suter Group. She has a special understanding of the job search process as she spent the last 30 years reinventing her own career. She's a graduate of Rutgers University, and she began her own career as a newspaper reporter and editor. She also received a master's in public policy from George Washington University and later worked in communications. When she was in communications, people who knew her as a writer started asking if she could help them with her resumes. And so now she's been creating resumes for her clients for many years and helping them build and reinvent their own careers. So we welcome Jaki with us this evening, and we're thrilled to have her. So thanks, Jaki.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I get started, can we have a quick show of hands maybe and see how many of you are currently actively engaged in a job search, sending out resumes? Okay, fair amount, yeah. Good, well, I hope this helps. And you know, we will have lots of time for Q&A afterwards, so feel free to take a couple of notes as we're going through this, and you will be able to, at the very end, I'll show you how you can get a copy of this so you can go ahead and look it over again. So let's get going. First of all, I want to thank everybody for having me here tonight. I am really happy to be doing this. And the problem that we're looking at now is looking for a job in this job market is unlike anything we've ever seen before. And I think we're all aware of that. Any of us who've looked for a job before have never been up against quite this kind of market and in this kind of situation. There's a whole other section we could do just on interviewing virtually, which is a whole other thing. But right now, today, we're just going to focus on your resume and what you can do to make it as strong as possible. And so where I want to begin is by talking about the fact that this is a very different job market. We are really in a position right now where everything has changed and we really need to understand what we need to do to adapt. The world's changed, the job market has changed, and most importantly, we moved from being in a seller's market with you, the person looking for a job in the driver's seat, to a buyer's market with the employers at the wheel. That means that employers are now the ones who are the buyers, and they're in charge because they have fewer jobs. We'll just say that. I'll show you how many in a few minutes, but they have fewer jobs to offer right now, and there are many, many, many more people looking for them. So basically, the seller is the job applicant. The buyer is the company that you're trying to get to hire you. And as we go through this, you'll see how marketing plays a really important role, especially now in being successful at doing this. Just to go back a little bit, as I mentioned earlier, that we've never been in a situation like this. This really shows you exactly where we were actually at the end of May. The state of Connecticut is always a little behind in collecting its numbers. But basically, we have gone from a situation where we had just under 17,000 people unemployed, or I should say collecting unemployment. There are many more people who are unemployed who are not collecting unemployment. That's a whole other part of this. That number is almost doubled now to 33,000. So the number of employed people has dropped, the number of jobs have dropped. So you can see really visually right now what you're up against. The good news, if you want to look at it this way, is that there's nothing that makes Connecticut puts Connecticut in a bad situation here. There are states that are in a much worse shape. We're pretty healthy, actually. This is not terrible when compared to anything else that's going on. But this is where you live and this is what you want to do. So we need to take that into consideration. Let's talk about the seller's market first. And when you're in a seller's market, and remember you're the seller, employers are fighting for candidates. They've got specific jobs and they want to make sure that they can get you to come in and take a job that they need to fill. So they're going to do everything that they can when they find somebody qualified to make sure that they get that person. So we're talking about signing bonuses. We're talking about the fact that there are all kinds of extra perks. There are really a lot of opportunities where recruiters are coming in, they're spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, going through everybody's profiles, seeing who might fit. They're looking for people who know people, and suddenly you start getting invitations to connect with people you don't know. The candidates, who are again you, the sellers, are calling the shots. You are looking at signing bonuses, stock options, a company car, upgraded travel. You get a nice meal at a 5-star restaurant. All those things come into play when the seller is in a seller's market. Now, here's an example of what a seller's market looked like just 2 years ago. And it's hard to believe that this was just 2 years ago. There were 6.6 million job openings in March of that year. There were also at the same time 6.6 million Americans who were looking for work. Not to say that they matched up with 1.6 million and the other, but they actually saw, and it happened the next month, that there were 6.6 million job openings and only 6.4 million Americans looking for work. So it happens. It could happen again. It could happen sooner than 2 years from now. But right now we're dealing with really a buyer's market. The buyer's market is where candidates, you, are fighting for available positions. And you need to make some compromises, or at least most people are finding that they need to make some compromises. Maybe you need to forego some extra perks, maybe look at a slightly lower compensation package. And you want to make sure that the company that you take a job with is going to stick around for a while. There are a lot of companies out there that are also not doing well, and there's going to be problems with that too. Whereas in a seller's market, the recruiters were going through LinkedIn looking for people. Now it's the job seekers who are looking for jobs, and they're looking to network, and networking becomes a really, really critical aspect of this. I know that you're going to be doing a LinkedIn session very soon, and hopefully that will tie into this in a way that you can make use of both of them and kind of get some good synchronization with the two things. You want to know people who know people, and that's where networking comes in. And really researching potential employers can be something that can really turn into a full-time job. So again, it's something that you need to take seriously. With employers calling the shots, they're kind of in take it or leave it negotiations. You're not going to have much room for signing bonuses or extra perks, at least not at first. And if they take you out for a meal, it's going to be at the company cafeteria and not a 5-star restaurant. But again, this is the situation as it is. You're in a position to do something about putting your thumb on the scale a little bit and shifting things over towards you. You've got to make a great first impression, and that's where your resume comes in. You can't leave it to them to figure out what you're all about or how you can help them. You need to demonstrate your value right up front, and it's all about quantifying what you bring to the table. So you've got to talk about your accomplishments and the results. You may be applying for a job you've never done before. People are doing that. It's not the worst thing in the world, and you might actually find a new career out of it. But you really need to, under those circumstances, show how what you've already done links to what they're looking for. And talk about how you've adapted quickly to new situations and show that you're ready to take on new challenges. ATS is another issue here. Applicant tracking systems play a huge role these days in who even gets to see your resume. I'm sure many of you are already familiar with applicant tracking systems. If you're not, there are many of them available. First of all, there are at least 10 or 15 large companies that are offering ATS to companies that are hiring. And something like 80 to 90% of large companies are using ATS programs to go through the resumes that come in before a human being ever lays eye on them. So if you don't make it through the ATS, nobody ever sees your resume. It's a little bit different with smaller companies. Some of them are using ATS too. It depends on the situation. You have to assume if it's a medium to large size company, that there's a good chance an ATS is going to be there for you. And in a nutshell, you need to be able to identify the keywords that come from the job description and find ways to get them into your resume. So you've got to look at that job ad or wherever you've seen this opening and try to make sure that you don't have just the spirit, but you actually have the words of what they have said they want so that you will get through the ATS. It's hard to know who's going to be looking at your resume, and you want to make sure that whoever looks at it has a good sense that you're already there, and the ATS helps them do that. Sometimes, incidentally, the ATS is a human. A couple of months ago, this was pre-pandemic, back in February, I was out west visiting my daughter, and I was there for a few days during the week. And I came to her office at the end of the workday so we could go out to dinner. And I showed up at her office about 6 o'clock. And I asked her how she was doing. I said, you know, you want to go out to dinner? We ready? And she said, well, actually, I've still got a little more work to do. And I said, is there anything I can do to help? I knew there wouldn't be. She and I do very different things. But she actually turned around and she handed me a stack of resumes. Somebody who worked for her was had just taken a job at Google and she needed to replace them. She had this stack of resumes, didn't have time to go through it. And I have to tell you, it was a really interesting experience for me because it's been a while since I just sat there and went through a pile of resumes. And I was pretty surprised at how bad most of them were. So, you know, it's kind of a low bar out there. If you do a good job, you will impress a lot of people. I can tell you that much, if that small experience tells me anything at all. So let's get back to how you can make your resume work for you, because really it's your most important marketing tool. And you need to tell the reader why they should hire you now. Okay, we're going to get started with marketing. As you heard before, I do have some experience in marketing. I spent many, many years in marketing communications for many, many large companies, including IBM and Pitney Bowes and a number of other companies that fall into the tech field. So once you've done your research, it's time to make a connection. What does the company need and what do you have to offer? Again, this is Marketing 101. Anybody who's ever taken a basic marketing class knows that marketing is all about selling features and benefits, but the benefits have to come before the features. So you want to share your success stories, and again, you want to remember to include those keywords. It's all about how you can help the company. You want to help them and show how you can help them meet or get past their goals. So you have to get comfortable with talking about your achievements. A lot of people are not comfortable talking about what they've done. You know, we were all taught at some point, let's not brag, it's not polite, you don't want to talk about yourself that way, talk about other people. All of those things are great in a social setting, but when you're marketing yourself, when you're looking for a job, you've got to get comfortable with talking about yourself and your achievements. And talk about how you did something rather than how you helped to do something. It's a stronger way to position yourself. Again, I'm going to remind you about the keywords. And remember to focus on outcomes and accomplishments. Be as specific as possible and connect the dots. Don't leave it to them to figure out that you are exactly what the company needs. I'm going to talk about the keywords a little bit more here. Keywords are the words that show up. I don't know how many of you know about this, so forgive me if I'm being repetitive, but the keywords are the words that show up in the job ad that talk about what they're looking for. And if you use them properly, it can make a difference between landing an interview and your resume landing in the trash pile. So a keyword can be a pair of words as well, like Microsoft Office could be considered a keyword, a key phrase, if you want to call it that. And you have to use the exact same form of the word. So if the ad says cost analysis, and you have somewhere in your job descriptions of what you've done in the past on your resume that says cost analytics, the ATS isn't going to pick that up. So the trick is to be able to use those words in ways that make sense in your resume, that don't stand out and saying, flash, here's a keyword, but that will get you picked up. And it's little things that you have to pay attention to. So there are a lot of details involved in that. So before I show you some resumes, I'm just going to go over with you some of the format. Okay, you start with the heading rather. Maybe you start with the headache too, I don't know. But you start with your full name. In my case, I would use Jaki Suter instead of Jacqueline Suter, because even though Jacqueline Suter is what's on my driver's license and my passport and my birth certificate, I don't use the name. So I'm Jaki Suter, that's how people know me. I did take a job once actually where there was another Jackie in the office, and they decided they were going to try to call me Jacqueline and let her still be Jackie. And everybody learned really quickly that I don't even answer to Jacqueline. So that was the end of that. The second thing you need is a title. And again, I will show you what I'm talking about here, but your title is the thing that best describes your professional brand. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a current title or the last title that you had in a job. What it really is a kind of a descriptor of what you do professionally and what you're good at. Also, your city, state, phone number, email, LinkedIn profile, if you want it, are all in there. There's no need to include your street address. There are some people who don't even like to include their city and state. There are people I've worked with who have always worked in New York. They live in Connecticut, but as far as they're concerned, nobody looking at their resumes in New York needs to know that they live in Connecticut. So take that for what it's worth. I'm not sure it makes that much of a difference, but it's important to some people. So next comes your professional profile. How many of you have been told that you should always start with an objective? Anybody? Yeah. Lose it. Objectives are not what anybody looking at your resume cares about anymore. Because again, that's about what you want, and their concern is what they want. So your objective isn't really very helpful to them or very useful, unless your objective was to earn enough money to go to medical school in 2 years, something like that. Well, that's nice to know you're not going to stick around very long, but seriously, no objectives. Your value proposition, in other words, what makes you perfect for the job, and your key accomplishments, and ideally, if you have numbers to back them up. And again, you'll see some examples of that. Your professional profile describes who you are as a person and what you're known for. It can be written in a narrative, it can be written in bullet points, it can be written in first person as a story. It really just depends on what you're comfortable with and how you feel you're best represented when somebody's looking at you on paper. The important thing is that it makes the connection between what the company is looking for and how you're going to be able to deliver it. Okay, so your areas of expertise. This is a list, and again, you'll see this in a few minutes, but basically this is a list of your core competencies, the things that you do well and that you like to do. If there's something that you do well but you don't like to do it, don't put it on there. There's really no point. At the same time, you really need to be able to list a number of things that hopefully incorporate a lot of those keywords. This is a place where we don't use verbs. Most of the time we talk about in marketing, we always want to use verbs. We always want to use action words. In this particular case, we don't. We're using nouns and adjectives, and you'll see why when I get to it. And finally, your professional experience. Always start with your current or most recent job, your company name, the location, and the dates of employment. A brief description of the company if it's appropriate. Everybody knows who IBM is, for example. You don't need to explain who IBM is. But if it's a company that mostly is not going to be known by whoever you're sending your resume to, take the opportunity to write a line or two about what kind of company it is, what they do. It should be something that's fairly simple to get in there just to have a frame of reference. And then keep going from there. List a brief description of the company, your role, your contributions, and we'll show you that again. When we get down to your education, you start. Oh, by the way, when you're talking about your professional experience, and this is something that is kind of up for debate, but if your career is longer than 15 years, it's fine to just list the places that you worked beyond that without giving descriptions of what the company was or what the job was. 15 years ago these days is a long time ago. So, you know, it's fine to list them, but don't go into a lot of detail because you're taking up valuable real estate with something that's probably not that important. Your education, your most recently completed education, the name of the school, the type of degree, your major, your date of completion, any honors or relevant publications. If you attended college but did not graduate, it is perfectly okay to say that you attended the college. So you can put in, for example, University of Connecticut, 2014 to 2017. And say what you studied and say what you did there. Again, you can talk about anything that happened, but you don't put the degree down. As long as you are being honest, you're fine. The worst thing you can do is lie on your resume. Lying on, and people do it, and you would be surprised how often they get caught by it. It's a fireable offense, and frankly, you just don't want to do that to yourself. So if you don't have a degree, that's great. Put what you do have. You have any kind of courses that you've taken. There are so many online programs and certifications now. There are lots and lots of things that you can list under education that don't have to be an actual college degree. And if you have any volunteer experience that you think is relevant or that you'd really like to share with this audience, that's fine. And if you can make a connection to the job requirements, even better. All of those things help to flesh you out as a person. Okay. Your mother probably taught you not to brag, but remember, your mother's not the one looking for a job, okay? So here is a first example, and I know these may be a little hard to see, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a couple of different versions of this so that you can come in a little closer and see how this works. These are all real resumes where names of the people and the places where they've worked have been changed so that you can get a real sense of how we directed a career. In this case, Irma was somebody who actually, and you don't see it on this resume because she didn't want to put it in there. She's been at this company for well over 11 years now. It's it's an investment firm, a private investment firm located in Connecticut. And they hired her in the beginning as a receptionist. And she worked her way up and worked her way up over 11 years. And she is now a compliance officer, which is a fairly big move for somebody who started out as a receptionist. As you'll notice, she used financial compliance officer. That is not necessarily her exact title so much as it is what describes who she is and what her career is about. And you'll see this as a branding tool. People use it often to help indicate that they're making a little bit of a move from one area to another area, and they want to make sure that they've been clear about how those things fit together. And that's something you can also talk about in your professional profile. Here, she uses numbers. Numbers are super important. If you can quantify anything, you should do it. And we talked about, and we separated out here, sometimes strengths get incorporated into areas of expertise. In this case, we wanted to separate out some things about her personality that really set her apart, which is that she's always ready to learn, which is important for somebody who is, constantly moving up, that they're taking on new challenges. She's organized, reliable, accountable, and she's had extensive services and experience in the services industry when it comes to finance. And she's also had experience in marketing. So she's got a lot of skills to bring to the table. Now you see what I was talking about with areas of expertise. These are things and not verbs. So project management, marketing materials, business development support, process development, SEC compliance, which is a huge thing. A lot of companies look for that if they're in the financial field. Program monitoring. She worked with clients a lot. She's got client administration. So all of those things make it very clear right up front that she's got that stuff. The beauty of the areas of expertise section, by the way, is that it's a good place for you to be able to fit in a lot of those keywords. It's a place where they're appropriate, and you just want to make sure, if at all possible, that you can get them exactly in there the way that they're expressed by the hiring company. So we go through her job history here because she and I were not sure how many people would know of the firm where she works. We went ahead and described them a little bit: a leading private investment firm specializing in blah, blah, blah. And so that gives you a little bit of a scenario to work around of what her workplace is. Her current job, again, basic, here's what she does, and then highlights. She took part in an SEC audit, which is huge. She was really the person who coordinated the whole thing. It included 96 quarters worth of documents. She made sure all the deadlines were met, maintained a comprehensive set of lists. She did everything. At the same time, she also was in charge of all of the marketing for the firm, which means that she handled and approved more than 375 requests for information and requests for proposals for the marketing team, and getting everything together to make sure that the company could continue to grow the business. In addition, she did lots of coordination. She ensured policies and procedures were met. She worked with the company counsel to monitor responses to regulatory developments, and she tracked new product launch compliance. So making sure that the company was doing everything that they were supposed to do. These are all things that she was able to say, I did this, I know what I'm doing. At the same time, her marketing experience when she first started there allowed her to eventually take charge of developing and maintaining all of their marketing materials. She implemented a new corporate identity procedure, and she really researched and developed all of the content for their quarterly reports, which is pretty significant. And again, some of the other things she did as an associate, as an analyst, as I told you, we did not have her first position there, which was as a receptionist. Before that, she worked in California. It was many years ago, and she was a client service rep. She was there for not quite a year, 9 months. So, and her education, which was oddly enough in financial, in journalism rather, not in financial. Here you can just see a little bit closer up, and I'm just gonna scroll through this quickly. You can get from me a copy of this so you'll be able to see it. But basically, that kind of tells you who she is. I have shared a second one with you here for somebody who's a little bit different. Ellen has what we refer to as a functional resume. Basically, there are chronological resumes and functional resumes. Most of us are familiar with the chronological resume. It's something that people are used to doing. Start with your most recent and work your way back. Occasionally, it makes sense because people have had diverse careers, they've changed jobs, they've done things that don't make it easy to follow a direct path, and it seems easier and really more to their advantage to be able to group what they've done in functions rather than by chronological order. Excuse me. In this case, and before I go any further about a functional resume, I want to give you a warning. Functional resumes do not work well in ATS systems. So if you are pretty sure that your resume is going to go through an ATS, if you're applying to a larger company, if you're applying to a company where you know they're hiring a lot of people, chances are good there's going to be an ATS involved, and you don't want to create a functional resume that skips around your timeline, which is really what happens in a functional resume, because you're grouping things rather than by time, you're grouping them by function. So, somebody who's switched careers might find it really advantageous to do that. And if you're applying to a small company, you can probably go ahead and do that safely. Otherwise, I would shift away from it. As it turned out for Ellen, Ellen knew for a fact that she did not want to work for a large organization. She wanted to work with a very small organization, and she wasn't concerned about ATS. So we went ahead and did it this way. Ellen's profile is done in bullet points. We use this opportunity to really show that she has a great deal of breadth in her experience. Her brand up top, which is in financial management, employee relations, and nonprofit fundraising, shows that she's done a lot of different things. Normally, you would not put your degree in your profile. For Ellen, it made sense because she has C-level experience, and she was looking for a C-level position. And the Wharton MBA really does give her a little bit of a leg up in that area. So again, we took the opportunity to go through each of these positions, used as many numbers as we could to describe what she did. We go into a children's cancer charity, again, nothing to do with the company where she worked before or after. She's had a lot of different experiences. And she went on to then talk about her other experiences. And her earlier career was, I think, a little bit more conventional. In terms of what you would think. She started out at the Federal Reserve Bank. She went to work for a major investment firm after she got her MBA. She worked for an international consulting firm for a while, a funds firm. So I think she really has very strong background. And I will tell you that this resume was completed back in October of last year. And she sent it out to a number of different organizations. She got called in for an interview at every single place where she sent the resume. So not sure that would happen today, but it did happen to that. So we were both very, very happy for her about that. Again, I have here, you can just zoom in a little bit more on what the resume actually says. So you can see some of the things that we talked about and how we phrase them. We have really a very different resume coming up now, though. And Michael is someone, and of the four that I'm showing you today, this is the only male. It's just an accident, really. I work with both men and women. But Michael has a very, very strong accomplishment loaded resume. He's got lots and lots and lots of numbers in this, as you'll see. He works in marketing. He's accomplished as a brand executive. He was really adamant about listing a lot of key skills and, what we often call expertise. He liked key skills better, so we left it that way. I think it's too many. I think we probably, I would have been more comfortable with 12 than 15, but be that as it may, I don't think anybody's going to not look at him because there are 15 skills there. I just thought it was a bit much. His professional experience starts out, and he's been in the liquor business. So his experience starts out really with numbers right off the bat. And as you scan through all of his accomplishments and everything he's done at every single position he's had, we were able to go in and quantify the contributions that he made. And we did that also by showing the results first and then how he got there. Okay, so for example, quadrupled sales volumes and generated blah, blah, blah by identifying key trends outside the wine segment and so on and so forth. More often than not, people tend to write their resumes with something that would say, identified key trends outside of blah, 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 and then saying the results. So I did this, and here is the result. In our heads, it makes sense to do that because what we're thinking is that I did this and here's the results. So in a timeline, it makes sense. But when you're reading a resume, you want the results first, and then you want to talk about how you got there. And it's something that if you can incorporate just that one little change into your resume, it will make a huge difference. Again, we try as much as possible to highlight those by bolding them in the beginning. The numbers are very strong here. Again, he's got some community involvement and his education. One thing I will say is that it is not necessarily easy just from reading the resume to understand how he might be able to take those skills into a very high level marketing position at a non-liquor company, because his entire career so far has been in the liquor business. So I think that's something that he was getting a little frustrated about, because he was going on LinkedIn and finding positions that he thought he could do in marketing at different kinds of companies, and was basically getting no response. And that was, I think, because everything he talked about was in the liquor business, and he wasn't able to make that transition. And you don't always, when you're applying for jobs through LinkedIn, for example, have a chance to write a cover letter. So this, again, isn't about resumes per se, but it really does tell you how important it is to make sure that your resume lands in the right hands. And the best way to do that is by ideally having some personal connection with somebody in the organization who can look at your resume, who's willing to take a cover letter and hand it off to somebody and say, hey, I think you should look at this person. The more you're able to do that, the harder your resume is going to work for you. So just something to keep in mind. Again, just because there was so much in here, I wanted you to be able to see it close up. And he's, you know, there's really nothing to find fault with in terms of how he's put his career together. And I was thrilled that he had all these numbers to share. Some people don't keep track of those things. And so it was certainly nice to have them. The other important thing in all of these resumes, and when Michael came to me with the first version of his resume, which I had thought about sharing with you, but I decided not to. It wasn't necessarily written badly. It was just, he had been told that your resume shouldn't go over 2 pages, and he's right about that. It really shouldn't. But he wanted it to look cool. So he created a resume where basically this whole side of the resume was white space with just titles like associate brand manager or, you know, brand manager. So in order to cram all of this content into the remaining 2/3 of the page that was available, he cut the type size down to like 8 or 9 point, which is something you really never want to do. You know, I'm sitting here with my reading glasses on, but the truth is that even I can't imagine anybody could have read that without a magnifying glass. And I think that was another reason why he wasn't getting responses. It's like nobody could read his resume. So keep that in mind. You know, your resume needs to be on no more than 2 pages, and it needs to be something that people can read. So rule of thumb is you really shouldn't go below 11 point type. If you have to use 10, I can't remember what we used on here now, it's been a while, but I will tell you that legibility is just as important as anything else. And so don't compromise to get more in by reducing your font size. It's going to backfire on you. I'm convinced of that. So let's go to one more person, Lori. Lori is a diabetes expert, and she really is. You will see that everything about her career is focused on diabetes. So yes, she's a consulting dietitian, she's a clinical officer. It's all focused on diabetes. And her career profile takes another slightly different turn here, in that we decided to tell her story here a little bit about who she is. There are a lot of diabetes experts out there. There are a lot of people who are dietitians. You really have to set yourself apart from everybody else. And so we really use this opportunity to just, I don't know if you can read it here, but you'll be able to see it later, to really sort of give her point of view and share what kind of person she is and how she approaches her work. And I think that's a really valid way to approach your career profile if you have something that is truly a passion of what you've done, and be able to share it and explain how you feel about it. I think that really comes across well. Her areas of expertise, again, are really focused on everything very tightly located around diabetes. Her professional experience has been focused on that, both clinically and with an organization. She, again, has some numbers, not a lot, but she has other things that she can share. One of the things that makes this resume a little bit different is that she has a lot of certifications and a lot of affiliations. She's also taught. And so her education section is a little bit more than just her degrees. We also talk about her affiliations and her awards. And because she had, when she came to me, a whole page of publications, rather than making that part of her resume, we instead decided that she would put them on a separate web page. So there's a URL where all of her publications are listed, and all they have to do is click on it. And that way we kept the resume to 2 pages, but for additional information, it was just 1 click away. And that's a good way to handle any opportunity that you have to offload stuff that's making your resume just feel a little tight, but it's something that you want people to know about. You can create a fact sheet of some sort and make it look nice, post it somewhere, and if people want to see it, they can. She also has done a lot of volunteer work, so you see that here as well. So a lot of experience isn't necessarily what you've done in your job, but what you've done throughout your career, and that makes a big difference. So again, here's just a close-up. You'll see these X's. Like I said, these are all real resumes, and I just felt that those particular things were things that she probably wouldn't want to share in general. So I just kind of X them out. But you can see a little bit more about who she is. So once you've done all of this, you've got your resume, you're all set to go, create a spreadsheet and keep track of all the resumes you're sending out. It is really hard to keep track of everything, especially if you're sending out several resumes every week and maybe more. So just put the spreadsheet together, list the title, company, the URL for the job posting, so you can go back and look at it. It's also not a bad idea, even though the URL will probably still exist. It's maybe not a bad idea to print that out, or to at least make a copy of it somewhere, so that you have it on file if you need to go back and look at the job posting, the date you sent it out. If there was a cover letter, you want to link to that file, any follow-up communication, details from the interview. You will write thank you notes, so you want to keep track of those, and your overall impression of the company. You know, what did you think of them? And the best time to do that is like within 24 hours after you've had your interview. Couple more things that I just want to make sure you know to do and not do. First of all, pre-designed templates are a really, really good way to go. And you can tweak your resume for every job application, but you've got a nice, clean template to work with each time. Use a spell checker, use a thesaurus judiciously. I say that because a lot of people want to sound more professional, and they think using bigger words does that for them. Really, plain English is good, but your grammar should be good as well. Check for missing words. This has always been my problem. I've been a writer all my life, and my biggest problem is not misspelling, it's just missing whole words. And I go over it and I read it again and again and again. My brain puts the word in there and I don't see it. So leave it alone for a while, go back and read it, and that's how you catch those things. And be careful about industry jargon. You don't want to go overboard. You want to show that you know the industry, so you can use some words that show that you're familiar with what's going on there, but don't go overboard. It gets really obnoxious. On the don't side, don't choose an artsy template. There are lots and lots of templates out there that you can purchase them on Etsy, for example. There are lots of different ways you can get them online for free. A lot of them have a space for you to put a photo of yourself. Do not put a photo of yourself unless you're applying for a job as a model. Do not put a photo of yourself on your resume. It doesn't buy you anything. And it rarely looks good. Don't use happy caps. I use that phrase. Again, this is one of those writer terms that tend to come up a lot. A lot of people think that you need to use capitals when you refer to words that refer to something that was capitalized. For example, I see this a lot where people talk about their job and they say, and we help the company do X, Y, and Z. And in that sentence, they use an uppercase C in company because they're talking about the company. No, it's just the company. If you say, you know, we helped Procter and Gamble, then obviously it's a name. But you know, if you're just talking about it as the company or anything like that, only capitalize things that need to be capitalized. When in doubt, look it up. Don't say references available on request. It's a waste of space. If they want references, they're going to ask for them. If they don't want them, you don't need to say it. It's fine. Be careful not to overuse the keywords. It is very easy to get obsessed with this idea of cramming in as many keywords as you can, and it shows in a resume. So you want to be careful about it. You want to get as many as you can in so that they come in as a natural part of what you're writing about. You don't want to use them continuously. And more important than anything else, don't lie, ever. It is amazing how damaging that can be to somebody's career, especially to lie about something like a degree or about a job. Things that can be checked will be checked. And if you lie about them, you may have ruined your entire career. So I hate to be a down person about this, but it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. You know, you can be honest and still do a good thing. This showed up in my email this morning, so I just wanted to share it with you. If you are on LinkedIn, and I hope you are, this came to me this morning as, you know, you can put a little ring around your photo, your profile photo on LinkedIn that says open to work. And all you have to do is, and you know, there's a little area where you can click on it and see why they did it. But I think it's a great idea. So, you know, if you're looking for work, go ahead and take advantage of this. I think it's available to everybody. And go to your LinkedIn profile, and it will make it easier for companies to find you as well. Last of all, if you want a copy of this presentation, or if you have any questions for me about resume writing or anything else about careers, I'd be happy to hear from you. You've got my phone number, my email address, my website, and I would really like to continue the conversation. But for right now, I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Jackie. That's been a wealth of information.
So I actually have a question about my resume. I got a job in April, one that I completely loved, and I lost it a month and a half due to COVID. Oh. So I put the, you know, I put my job on my resume, but does it make sense to kind of write like, I don't know, somewhere COVID loss on the resume?
Sure. You can just, yeah, make that the last bullet in the job, you know, whatever you say about the job.
Yeah.
You're not going to be the only person that's happened to.
Yeah.
I actually have worked with a couple of people in the last few months who had just received a job, and it didn't last more than 6 weeks. So it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
Oh, there is one in the chat. How vital is a cover letter?
That's a good question. If you have an opportunity to write a cover letter, you should. So vital as in, yes, it is vital because it gives you another opportunity to present yourself. And you can, in the cover letter, talk about things that aren't necessarily in your resume, which is ideally what you want to do. Somebody came to me a couple of weeks ago with a cover letter that was really just a repetition of their resume. And, you know, I did this, I did that, I have this, I have that. And it was all on his resume. And really, there was no point to the cover letter. So again, the whole idea of having a cover letter is to elaborate on things that you weren't able to elaborate on. Talk about why you were attracted to this company. You're not going to get to do this. Use the cover letter to position yourself as someone who is really interested and excited about whatever it is that they're hiring for. And again, that's something, because it's specific to that job, it's not going to go in your resume. So that's what you use the cover letter for. You use the cover letter rather than to rehash your resume, you use it to present yourself as somebody who has some genuine interests and some curiosity.
Well, Jackie, you have been so thorough and given us so much to go on.
It took a little extra time too, I apologize.
No, it's been wonderful. And I think certainly make it much easier to write a resume after listening to you tonight.
Good, I hope so. And I am happy to share any of those resumes that I shared with you tonight. I'd be happy to email them to you so you can look at them. By all means, go out and explore some of the resume templates that are out there. You don't have to pay for them. As like I said, Etsy does have some that are for sale. A couple of them seem like they might be worth it. They're not very expensive, but there are a lot of good ones to use. So yeah, go ahead and use that. Don't kill yourself reinventing the wheel, for sure.
Jackie, we do have a couple more questions that have come in. So,
Sure.
One of them is, what would you suggest for someone looking to change careers or specialties after 17 years at the same company?
Okay. I think some of that depends on, how radical a change it is. If it's a pretty extensive change, then I would say that is where you have two things that you want to concentrate on. One is hopefully you'll have an opportunity to include a cover letter, and that's where you make those connections and you explain what it was about this new career, and hopefully explain, where you see yourself fitting in and how you got there. I think that's fine. People do it all the time. As for your resume, there are ways to say that you're looking for a position as XYZ, even though, up until now you've been doing ABC. That's certainly, looking to transition to X from Y. There are lots and lots of ways to phrase that. And, the ones that I showed you tonight are pretty straightforward in terms of how people position themselves with the title, but you can be pretty creative with that. There's no law that says it has to be a job title. Does that help?
Great, thanks, Jackie. And then one other question was, let's see. What is important to change from resume to resume for different jobs?
Certainly the keywords, if you have an opportunity to do that. You might find that one job description has more of an emphasis on a part of a job that you've had in the past or your current job that you haven't focused a lot in your resume. You might want to go back and tweak your resume so that it shows that you've done those things. It really just kind of depends. You want to make sure that the resume does the best job that it can do for showing how you're qualified for that job. So anything that you can do without completely ripping the resume apart and starting all over again, which is not the worst thing in the world either, but you don't want to have to do it 100 times. Anything that you can do to up your chances of getting an interview is worth the extra hour or two maybe that it will take, if that, to tweak your resume a little bit to, push it more towards that particular position.
Okay. And then a follow-up question for that one also is, if I have two different jobs in entirely different fields, both are important to me, should I include details on the side of it that isn't as relevant?
I would still include the details. If both jobs are important to you, there's a reason why they're important to you. And both of those things appeal to some part of who you are that you probably want to find a way to share. So I think you should be able to find a way to make a connection even though it doesn't appear necessarily. I'm trying to think right now. I think I have actually dealt with something like this in the last couple of years. I can't remember the exact resume off the top of my head, but I do think it's certainly possible and worth making a little effort to make that connection. It makes sense.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much.